How did America's sweetheart end up in so many feuds? Dolly Parton is often seen as untouchable, a glittering force of positivity wrapped in sequins and Southern charm. To most of the world, she's America's sweetheart, a living legend, the definition of grace. But what people rarely see is the weight she's carried behind that warm smile. Throughout her decades-long career, Dolly has faced betrayal, legal battles, industry snubs, and the kind of public scrutiny that would send most artists into hiding. Still, she never cracked, never lashed out, and never lost her shine. Today, we're going behind the rhinestones to uncover the emotional, high-stakes battles that shaped Dolly Parton's legacy, not just as a musician, but as a symbol of resilience. When Dolly first joined the Porter Wagoner show in 1967, it seemed like a dream pairing. Porter was already a country music star, and Dolly, young, ambitious, and brimming with talent, was the perfect complement. Together, they made hit after hit, quickly becoming one of the most recognizable duos in Nashville. But Dolly always had bigger dreams. By 1974, she decided to leave the show and strike out on her own. That decision didn't sit well with Porter. He felt betrayed and blindsided. Instead of wishing her well, he hit her with a $3 million lawsuit for breach of contract. For context, $3 million in 1974 is roughly $18 million today. This was more than a professional falling out, it was a personal attack. Dolly's response? She didn't countersue. She didn't badmouth him in interviews. She wrote, "I will always love you," a soft, heart-wrenching goodbye to the man who had once championed her career. Think about that. She answered litigation with love. The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court, but the emotional scars lingered. Years later, Dolly paid for Porter's medical expenses near the end of his life and spoke kindly of him in interviews. She chose empathy over ego. That was the beginning of a pattern we'd see throughout her life. Dolly Parton didn't just help shape country music, she redefined its borders. Her ability to blend Appalachian storytelling with pop sensibility made her a trailblazer, not a traditionalist. But not everyone saw her boundary breaking as a badge of honor. As the genre evolved into the 21st century, Dolly, despite her decades of chart-topping success, found herself subtly snubbed by some of the very artists she helped pave the way for. One of the more revealing moments came in an offhand comment from Wilco frontman Jeff Tweedy, a pillar in the alt-country scene. In an interview that was meant to celebrate country music's complexity, Tweedy took a quiet jab at Dolly's legacy, suggesting she had drifted too far from her authentic country roots. He didn't name her as an outcast, but the implication was there, floating in the subtext like smoke after a shot's been fired. It wasn't just about Dolly either. His comment reflected a broader undercurrent in the country world, an elitist gatekeeping mindset that measured authenticity not by talent or influence, but by how gritty, understated, or pure an artist seemed. And let's face it, Dolly's image, flashy outfits, over-the-top wigs, full glam, has never fit into the minimalist aesthetic that alt-country artists champion. But does rhinestone sparkle make her any less rooted? This wasn't the first time Dolly had heard whispers about her country credibility. In fact, the criticism goes back to the 1970s, when she dared to release crossover hits like "Here You Come Again." The backlash was swift, with traditionalists accusing her of selling out. But here's the twist. Those same songs brought millions of new listeners into the genre. Dolly wasn't abandoning country, she was inviting others in. Unlike others in her position, Dolly never fired back. She didn't question Tweedy's place in the genre or call out the hypocrisy. She stayed quiet, but active. She kept creating, kept collaborating, and kept reaching new generations without ever once compromising the mountain soul that lives in her voice. Because for Dolly, country isn't about a dress code or an accent. It's about heart. It's about honesty. And it's about telling the truth, even when the world doesn't want to hear it in rhinestones. When three powerhouse vocalists like Dolly Parton, Linda Ronstadt, and Emmylou Harris come together, the result should be effortless brilliance, right? But talent alone doesn't guarantee harmony. Especially when each woman brings not only a once-in-a-generation voice, but also a well-earned sense of creative direction, artistic pride, and personal history. The idea for Trio started in the late 1970s, when all three artists expressed a shared dream of blending their unique styles into a single project. But even dreams with the best intentions can stall when real-life schedules, record label politics, and personal ambitions get involved. Despite their mutual admiration, the project was quietly shelved for nearly a decade before it finally came to life in 1987. And the process of getting there? Far from smooth. Each singer had a different musical compass. Emmylou leaned into traditional Americana and folk storytelling. Linda brought a more polished, pop-influenced sensibility. And Dolly, ever the chameleon, had danced across country, gospel, and pop charts alike. Trying to align their visions was like asking three artists to paint on the same canvas, using completely different brushes. Even the recording sessions became a tightrope walk. There were moments of creative tension, subtle clashes over arrangements, song choices, and vocal blends. Dolly's voice, bright and unmistakably distinct, sometimes overpowered the more restrained tones of her counterparts, leading to whispered suggestions that she pull back. Meanwhile, Linda Ronstadt, known for her perfectionism, reportedly struggled with the looseness of some sessions, preferring a more structured process. Emmylou often found herself playing the mediator, balancing two strong energies while keeping the emotional core of the music intact. And yet, despite the hurdles, the final product was nothing short of magic. Trio wasn't just a commercial success, it was a statement. A reminder that women in country music could collaborate without conforming, lead without competing, and create art that transcended genre. The album earned critical acclaim, sold over 1 million copies, and won a Grammy for Best Country Performance by a duo or group with vocal. But perhaps the album's biggest triumph was invisible. It showed that three women, each with her own storm to weather, could meet in the middle and make something timeless. Not because it was easy, but because they were willing to work through the friction. And for Dolly, that meant doing what she's always done best, leading with grace, stepping back when needed, and always keeping the music first. In the world of music, few things sting more than being forgotten for your own creation. For Dolly Parton, this was never more true than when her song, "I Will Always Love You," was reintroduced to the world by someone else. Whitney Houston's thunderous, emotional rendition in The Bodyguard didn't just top charts, it obliterated them. It became the definitive version for a new generation. So much so that many listeners had no idea it was Dolly's song to begin with. And that's the complicated beauty of this moment. Here was a song born from personal heartbreak, a farewell letter wrapped in melody, written by Dolly herself in the emotional aftermath of her split from Porter Wagoner. The lyrics weren't just poetic, they were autobiographical. But when Whitney stepped up to the mic, those same words took on a new shape, a new soul. What once whispered became a roar. At any point, Dolly could have stepped forward and demanded the narrative back. She could have corrected every misattribution, made it known that those lyrics, those royalties, belonged to her. Instead, she did what she always does. She chose grace. She watched Whitney's star rise, she praised her talent, and she let the moment belong to her. In private, though, it was different. Dolly has shared that the first time she heard Whitney's version, she was driving alone and had to pull over because she was so overwhelmed with emotion. She cried, not from jealousy, but from awe. Imagine hearing the pain of your past reinterpreted with such power that even you barely recognize it. It was a masterclass in letting go. Dolly had given the world a song rooted in vulnerability. Decades later, she watched it grow into something unrecognizable, yet still deeply hers. And for her, that was enough. The world may have forgotten the songwriter behind the song, but Dolly never forgot the story that gave it life. Dolly is godmother to Miley Cyrus, and that's no honorary title. She's been a real presence in Miley's life for decades. When Miley began shifting away from her Disney image, launching a series of controversial performances and reinventing herself as a bold, sexually expressive artist, the world waited for Dolly to react. She didn't condemn. She didn't praise blindly either. Instead, she offered balanced, thoughtful support. In interviews, Dolly said things like, "Miley's gonna do it her way, and I trust her." She acknowledged that some of Miley's choices wouldn't be her choices, but she respected her goddaughter's autonomy. This was the kind of nuanced, non-judgmental response that only someone like Dolly could give. It wasn't about saving face or playing politics. It was about love without control. Dolly didn't lecture, she listened, and she reminded the world that you can support someone fully, even if you wouldn't walk the same path. Why Dolly's silence might be her loudest statement. For someone who's had so many reasons to fight back, Dolly rarely does. She doesn't air dirty laundry. She doesn't fire shots on social media. She often says more by saying nothing at all. And maybe that's why she's endured. In an industry that thrives on scandal and outrage, Dolly's silence has become its own kind of power. She shows us that grace isn't weakness, that kindness isn't naivety, and that legacy isn't built just on hits. It's built on how you handle the people who try to tear you down. Dolly Parton's story isn't just about music. It's about choosing dignity over drama, love over lawsuits, silence over pettiness. So the next time you see her sparkle on stage, remember, she's not just a performer. She's a woman who's walked through fire and made it look like a fairy tale. If you found this story inspiring, there's a lot more where that came from. Hit that like button, subscribe for more untold stories, and tap the bell so you never miss a drop. And be sure to check out the description for links to more deep dives into music's most fascinating icons. Dolly didn't just sing about strength, she lived it. And that's why we'll always love her.